This is Family Electric Ghost, and we're live on the air with Melissa Robinson-Winemiller for the first time. Welcome to the Family Electric Ghost podcast. How you doing tonight?
I'm doing great, Phantom. Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
Well, it's great to talk to people from around the world. We've been talking to people since 2016, and we're out there. We're over 1,300 episodes. We're at like 1,303 with this one. But
Wow.
before we get to the heart of your story, and I give everybody a little bit about your background, I always ask people a couple questions before we get started. Like, what motivates you, and why do you do what you do?
Because I was stuck in a really toxic work environment and it was one that I couldn't get out of. And so my motivation is that if I can make a single person feel that they're not alone when they're in that kind of, I mean, we'll call it what it is, abusive environment,
Mhm.
then I've accomplished what I set out to do.
I think that's important because a lot of times, I hold a couple of hats. I've been in software design for over 30 years. And I actually was in a couple places. One time I went with a startup and it was very toxic environment. And I had to get out of it. It was a great opportunity, but it was just too, they were just, it was just wasn't helping my soul.
Yeah.
So I was like,
Yeah.
it's monetarily good, but it's really did not respected me as a human being. So I was like, I can't do it.
Yeah.
So I think it's important for people to kind of like realize like it's okay, like that you can exit those things, you know.
Yes. And there's no shame in it. You're not a failure. You haven't, you made a mistake. It's just like being in a relationship, right? You made a mistake and some relationships are better when they end.
Yeah. And sometimes it's not a good fit. So
Yeah.
yeah, because like empathy, I think is a lot as today, especially. We can talk about what you think about it, but it's like there's this thing with like toxic masculinity, where empathy is like, oh, that's a soft skill, that's weak, that's woke, that's this, that's that. And so
Yeah.
I'm an artist. So artists tend to be vulnerable. So I kind of lean into my softer sides, my vulnerability in the arts. But I felt like I could bring that into IT as well. And
Yeah.
I try to left brain, right brain do that. But some folks want to have this badge of honor of being like tougher than nails and they got to be this and that. And I'm like, that's all showboating.
Yes. Yeah. It is. And the thing is they don't realize they're hurting themselves as much as they're hurting anybody else.
Hmm.
They don't even see it.
So, like, when your career like shifted after experiencing unempathetic leadership, like, well, what maybe you can walk us through the moment, like how that happened and what you started to, like deconstruct it and figure out what you're going to do with that learned experience.
Yeah. So I'm like you. I was a musician. I was an artist for decades and I loved it. I mean, I got to do really cool things because of it. I got to tour Europe and I got to play with people like Ray Charles and
Mm.
Mannheim Steamroller and Manhattan Transfer. I mean, those are not people that come and hung out with my family.
Yeah,
So,
yeah,
you
that's
know,
you're doing a good you're in the thick of it.
yeah, and I loved it. I loved every minute of it, but you know how it is when you're an artist, sometimes that doesn't pay the bills.
Yeah.
So, even when you're doing top level stuff, you may or may not have benefits, you may or may not have that kind of coverage. So, I kinda owned up to the fact that I had to figure this out and went and got my first doctorate and went to be a French horn professor at a university. Because that way I was still performing, but I was also teaching, and I loved giving that passion for music to students. I loved my students.
Mhm.
But I went far away from family and friends and everybody, and I just packed up and left. And within months, during my very first term, I was assaulted by one of my colleagues,
Mhm.
which, makes it hard at work because you have to see this person every day. His office was right next to mine. There was no getting away. And over the next 7 years and the lack of empathy with where I was at, the system was broken. The system was
Yeah.
just plain
That's a totally
messed up.
broken so the HR. Well, I know I went to HR one time and it didn't
Yeah.
work out that well. I can't imagine, like, sometimes, like, you don't feel that you can do it.
Oh, no, I went to HR. I talked to everybody that I could, I talked to the union, I talked to the ombuds, I talked to HR, I talked all the way up through my department, and they didn't wanna know. They were more happy to,
Yeah.
keep it quiet and, HR actually did a huge sensitivity training for my whole department, which means then I had a target on my back because everybody knew who was stirring up trouble,
Mhm.
and it was ugly, which is why at the end of 7 years, I mean, I had started drinking heavily and my mental health was terrible, and I had to walk away because was just it was
Yeah,
too
I mean,
much.
it's just like it's interesting when they tell you they give you these processes. Oh, you should report, you should do this, you should do that, and then if they really aren't really empathetic, they really
Yes.
aren't supportive, if they really are just really kind of just allowing the structure to exist, or the bad behavior to exist, because like, bottom line is like, if that person's bringing in the money or they got the power and nobody wants to shift that, so they're really not going to address it.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and I think you make a perfect point. They didn't want to address it. They were happy with the status quo. They weren't hurting. I was hurting, And like you talk about the toxic situation you were in too. I mean, someone was benefiting from that situation. It just wasn't you,
Yeah. Well,
you
yeah,
know?
it's like you get these situations where, it's just it's like, if you're the other, if you're the person that's getting the brunt of it,
Yeah.
nobody wants to understand that. There's always like, well, you must have caused it. Right? That you must have,
Right.
you're not up to snuff, like, you're not sucking it up, you're not like, you don't understand it. Like, 'cause you get this situation where you get these frat boy kind of behavior,
Yes.
or you get this kind of boys club behavior, or the country club. Like, they're all in that group, but you're not. So,
Right.
like, looking in the mirror, you can see I'm probably not in the country club.
I
I
think most of us aren't. That's the funny thing.
wasn't in, I was in a frat, but it wasn't their frat.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know what I mean?
Yeah, totally. Well, in software, I mean, because if you're in tech and you're in software, they can be really, you
Yeah.
know,
Well, the
tight
problem
about their
I
group.
have with the technocrats is, like, they thought because they're nerds, not to put them down, but
Yeah.
what I find is a lot of times they got tunnel vision, and because they have, like, technical ability, right? They've got, like, they're really good at algorithm, they're really good at physics, they're really good at this. They sometimes have this judgmental thing going on, and they don't understand people with neurodiversity or people outside their experience.
Yes.
So then they just and then it's like, because they're tech, it's like, oh, we're evolved. Like, how could you dare say that we would ever treat anybody like that? Where this is not a factory, this isn't a warehouse, but it's like, it doesn't. You don't have to be Archie Bunker to do what you're doing.
Yeah, it's true. It's definitely still there. I think that's hilarious because it's really true, I mean, it may be a little more underground, but that doesn't mean it's gone.
Yeah. What I found is, like, there was this whole thing where, because they like this thing with, like, the DEI, and before that it was affirmative action. And you
Yeah.
would have people, like, I remember when the first day I went to Bowdoin College, this young Republican came up to me, not to be a jerk, but, like, they came up to me and told me I was taking the place of a qualified student by being there. That there's only 30 black kids on the campus in 1986 out of 1,300 kids. And they said I was taking a qualified position away from, and this guy just walked up to me in the middle of the lunchroom and told me that. I didn't even know who he was. He just decided he could walk up to me and tell me that. So
Wow.
so like, I've seen this kind of behavior going back to 86. And what I've seen is a progression of that being, like, maybe, like, not the common thing to say, to now that being the common point of view.
Yeah. I'm sorry that you had to do that because, because I'm sure, yeah, college, you're young at that point, and that starts shaping your sense of self. And
But
that's
I
not
knew I had a right to be there, so I
yeah.
wasn't gonna get dissuaded. But what I'm saying is, like, the idea is that your qualifications, even, like, are automatically in question if you're the other, if you're a
Yes.
woman, if you're, like, gay, if you're anybody other than who they think is the standard, then
Yes.
there's no empathy for your experience. There's no empathy. Like I'm part Cherokee, I'm part Blackfoot. There's
Yeah.
no empathy for that history. You're not supposed to think about that. You're supposed to say, well, you're just here now. Deal with like you without thinking about the past.
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
like, really?
Yeah. No,
But
it's true. I mean, I was a female brass player, and when you think about, tubas and trombones and French
yeah,
horns and trumpets,
how many
it's
people
a
do you see that were like you? Like, did
right.
you get like heat from the other horn players?
Oh, I got heat from the whole brass. I mean, not always. I don't wanna, I don't wanna stereotype everybody and say they were all like that, because that's not the case.
Hmm.
But I did have my run-ins. I mean, when I was touring over in Rome, I was the only female in the section, and they nicknamed me Delicatissima because I was the only woman, and it's like, "Yeah, okay, fine, I can keep up just fine." But the point is that's how they viewed me, you know?
Yeah, it's just hard to get people to get outside their lane. You know,
Yeah.
people are
Yeah.
we're getting so fragmented,
Yes.
and it seems like tech is not helping that. Like,
Yes.
like if you get out there in the algorithm space, you get sent what you like. You
Yes.
don't get sent what you don't like. So then you don't get outside your comfort zone, which, as an artist, the only way you grow is if you go outside your comfort zone.
Yeah, you have to. Yeah, totally. I mean, those echo chambers, yeah. I mean, and there's unless you actively seek it, there's no way out of 'em.
Yeah. I mean, because it's self fulfilling. And like you just keep on seeing what you like. Yeah, I'm a
Yes.
synth player, so I keep on getting ads about Moogs and and Roland Junos and like, okay, well, what if I want a Fender Strat? Well, it doesn't think I want that, so it doesn't show me that.
Yeah. Yeah, it's true.
And so it's like
Yeah.
you have to be willing to kind of, be on the outer edges of what I call the bell curve, like
Yes.
which we know about the like on the outer edges of the bell curve, that's where a lot of stuff is happening. Like people want the somebody to come up with a new idea, but a new idea is probably not coming from the middle.
No.
It's coming from the outer edges.
Yeah. Well, and by the time it gets to the middle, it's no longer a new idea. I mean, you think about, Seth Godin talking about early adopters and that these are gonna be the people that are on the cutting edge. It's not the people in the middle that are adopting it along with everybody else. It's the ones who see it first,
Yeah, like if
you
you're the
know?
trailblazer, you're the one that goes out there. Like and
Yeah.
Steve Jobs is like, yeah, I'm gonna make an iPhone and say, well, who's gonna buy that? Everybody thought he was silly. That was, oh, that's not gonna work. Why is anybody gonna buy a phone
Yeah.
from Apple? Well, I guess
Yeah.
that was they missed the boat on that.
Yeah, I'd say. I mean, just but it's true. I mean, going all the way back to the Wright brothers, they were told they were laughed at. "The man's never gonna fly."
You're not
Oh,
supposed to
well,
fly.
yeah, yeah. If man was meant to fly, he'd have wings. Well, we
Yeah,
made our own.
yeah. It just seems like the culture today, like kids are getting so programmed to be in their lane, or to not like even try because like why do the hard work because AI could do it.
Yeah,
Right. So, like, do you actually, you don't know anything about the Dewey Decimal System. You don't really redo the research on your own. You don't go outside your comfort zone. You hang out with your in crowd or your out crowd, whatever. You stay in your crowd. Um, and just the empathy for the other side seems to be missing. Like people just get like if you're on the net, you can just say, "Well, I hate this other person."
yeah,
You don't even know who they are. Like, at least like when I was on campus, I could go debate this group. I could debate the young Republicans. I could go debate the young socialists. I could go debate the environmentalists. I can have a conversation. We can go and have a structured debate.
yeah, yep. That is one thing about the internet is we're anonymous. I mean, you're a name, you're not a person. So it becomes a lot easier to not have empathy for the other person because they don't come across as a person.
Yeah, so, like,
you
the
know?
people are you get to this bad situation where people start calling people inanimate objects or say, "You're a cockroach. You're
Yeah.
you're you're vile. You're this." So, yeah, they say if you dehumanize people, if you start calling somebody an insect, or you call them lower than they come out with all these names. It desensitizes people to say that it's okay to then push on this person, to hit this person, to do other things.
Yeah.
And I think that's where the empathy to me is like you have to be able to put yourself in the other person's shoes, right? You have to be able to
Yep.
do that. And we're being told, oh, that's woke.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's actually a big part of empathy. It's called perspective taking, and it goes all the way back to when you're a kid and somebody says, "Well, how would you feel if that was you?" And it's something that's been studied and talked about since, empathy really became kind of a study around the 1900s, which is interesting when you consider, we talk about all these other emotions going all the way back to the ancient Greeks, but actually talking about empathy and that human connection, it started around 1900s or so.
Mhm.
And we've been studying it pretty solid for since that point, and it's actually made a lot of iterations. At first, they kind of had it pegged to mean pity, and it
Mm.
doesn't mean that anymore, But this idea of perspective taking and understanding the other person. And the interesting thing is you don't have to understand the situation. It's the feeling or the understanding of the situation. So, like, if someone has someone who died, I may or may not understand what it is to have someone close to me who's died, but I'll understand a sense of loss. I may understand what it is to lose a job. I may understand what it is to lose a pet. I may understand, maybe not a spouse, but a child or somebody else. So taking the time to get into the other person's bubble and understand what it is in their shoes. And the flip side of that as well is if I'm trying to understand you, now I'm leaving an opening for you to understand me because empathy at its best works in both directions. So,
Yeah, I think
that
it's just people have to be willing to get outside of the safety zone. I think people have this kind of tribal human nature goes back, millennia of to stay safe. And when you tag the thing you're not comfortable with or the other or this different experience, that's dangerous. You tie it to like being the wolf at the door. So people tie like, oh, this other person's experience is so foreign to me that's dangerous. Right. So the point is like, so then you get to the point where you say their right to exist or their freedom infringes on my freedom because it's so offensive that it infringes on my freedom. So I just have to get them out of my perspective. Or I have to not. And we've gotten to this point where people are at this, they're at that's the place they're at. They can't even talk to you. They can't work with you because you're so foreign to them that they can't even have a positive debate about like, is there anything that they're saying that's valuable? No, it's not valuable because they're X.
Well, but I think we have to be careful and, because I hear what you're saying and you're not wrong. But if we automatically say everybody else feels this, then it's just as easy as them saying, well, you feel this without them understanding us. If we want other people to actually be empathetic and be open and be vulnerable, it's up to us to set the precedent. It's up to us to say, I want to understand you. I may not get your point of view. I may be absolutely diametrically opposed, but I want to try and understand. Can you explain it to me? Why do you say this? How did you get there? Because now you're opening discourse. And if we wait for someone else to do it, it's never going to happen.
But I think it's important to have that discourse, but I also there's a certain behavior that I've seen where people say they want the discourse, and then you have the discourse, and then they still invalidate everything that you say, right? And they say that everything that you said is either silly, stupid, it's not right, it doesn't mean anything. So then they gain their audience, they monetize their point of view, and nobody even really validates anything the other side said. So you have this like faux debate with no moderator, with no And then the other side gets power to an extent where they start to go and get rid of DEI. They get rid of like all kinds of things. They get rid of it, and you don't get any. Your voice is not really being heard because you're being kind of pushed out.
Yeah, there is some of that, but I still would be hesitant to label everybody that way. I
I'm
know
not
what you
saying
mean.
everybody. I'm saying there
Yeah.
are people that are doing that, and it's
Oh,
not really a
sure.
fair debate. And
Yeah.
that's why.
Oh, there will always be people that I mean, there's always going to be all sorts of people, and yeah, there is that. And there's I mean, there's people there's a percentage of society that has no empathy. You know, I mean, they figure about 7%. So that's 1 in 14 people. So, you think about just the people you've had interactions with today, you could have had one of those people that are like that. So, as long as we're dealing with a subset of humanity, you're going to have all types. But that's really why I think you have to be careful with it because as long as there are types that are like that, there will be types like us who do want to listen. And if we, shut everybody off from that, then we never have the chance to talk. I mean, think about it. We have the chance to actually talk now, thanks to the internet and thanks to being able to be open and have this discourse. And that's phenomenal. So, yeah, there's always going to be jerks, but there's also going to be people like us.
Yeah, because I mean, the thing I get worried about is when you can have a mission to enlighten people, you have a mission to speak out and say that, like, I want to bring my perspective. Like, my daughter's a disabilities advocate,
Mhm.
and she speaks in spaces, and then there are people like, and she continues to speak in spaces. But there are people that come into the spaces and they try to dox people and they try to attack in that space, and she doesn't stop, but they do really vile things. Now, it
Yeah.
doesn't stop her from doing it, but to the point where, you know, it seems like the algorithm sometimes shadow ban. It seems like sometimes you don't seem to. It seems to be things going on that are pushing the point of view of trying to bring people together. Sometimes it seems the monetization is happening on the people who are breaking people apart.
Oh, well, I mean, there's been studies on that. That's for sure. If it's a negative thing and you get negative reaction on the internet, you're going to get more play. That's the way the algorithm is built. So there's no way around that. And I mean, we live in a culture where if it bleeds, it leads. So this is what we've set up. And unfortunately, yeah, there are people. I mean, I've had people come after me, and I'm sorry if you're going to go after the empathy lady. I mean, do you kick puppies too? I
Yeah,
mean, what is the problem with this?
because
Yes,
it
they
seems
are there,
it
but
seems like it's a danger. They feel it's a danger of you trying to bring people together. Like if you
yeah.
try to have empathy, that is dangerous to their mindset, right? That you're the problem. And not that I'm not gonna try to engage you, but when if you engage to dox and be violent and to be repressive, like I can engage you to a certain point, but when you go over the line, then things have to we have to set boundaries.
See, I think maybe that's where we're different because I don't engage them. I'm like, "Fine, if I'm not giving my energy to that." My energy goes towards positive. I wanna collect people around me who understand that it's important, who know that this is the way of the future, and understand that if we don't get this figured out, we're spiraling into a place where we're losing empathy. So if those people wanna live that life, that's cool. I hope they have their very best life. I'm going to concentrate on the people who we can actually build each other up because I know they're there because I see them every day.
Mhm.
And if someone wants to be crummy about it, have at it.
Yeah,
Block and release. That's
yeah.
the end of
Well,
that.
that's the boundary I'm kinda saying, like, at some point, you gauge them and you give them a shot, and then they like, okay, they've gone over the line, then they're
Yeah.
not trying to be positive.
Yeah.
Um,
But
so
that's why it's up to us to collect those people around us. Because if the more people we have on this path, the more people we have moving forward and saying this isn't all right, the more people we have actually talking about how important empathy is and the work that we do is, the better it's going to be because we create ripples. And pretty soon, those people with the bad attitudes either start to look up and go, oh, well, maybe they were right, or they self-select out. And either way is fine.
I
Makes
think
no
it's
difference
also
to me.
important to let people know that the soft skills and the empathetic skills, even though we just mentioned that being, you know, talking about the other things can be very profitable, right? So,
Yeah,
the algorithm, you can make a lot of money. You can get to be
sure.
famous. And so
Yeah.
then that's in a capitalist system is like, well, if it makes money, then it must be right. That becomes the argument. But then the idea is
Whose
like,
argument?
well,
Who's making that argument?
well, if somebody believes that all profit is good, if you have a mindset that all profit is good, even if it's morally reprehensible, right? That because you made profit, there are some folks that like a Calvinist point of view. The more money you make, the closer you are to God. It doesn't really matter if what you're saying is right. If you have that money, that means you're a better person. So it doesn't matter what the other side thinks, what you're saying, if it's morally reprehensible, because you have the money, then you actually are doing the right thing.
Then let them do it.
Yeah.
Let
I
them
mean,
go.
that's a point of view. That is a point of view that
Yeah.
some folks have.
Oh,
And
yeah.
they've kind of set themselves in that zone. And they said, well, and if you don't make money from your perspective, they say, see, that's failing. That is
But I
failing
don't
in the
care.
marketplace. What does that not everything's about money. I'm an artist. So you know that.
Yeah. Yeah. It makes no difference to me. What they think says more about them than what it says about me, because that's what's going on in their head and their world. I'm concerned about what's going on in my head and my world, and I want to change the world for the better. So I don't have time for that nonsense.
Yeah, I mean it's important not to have time for it, but when they actually are making, I guess my concern is if you have this kind of Calvinistic greed focused mindset that has profit over everything, no matter where it comes from, to the point where, well, it's profitable to pollute the river. It's profitable to throw carcinogens in the river. Like, okay, you can make a lot of money doing that, and you don't have to care that that's going to cause cancer. I'm a cancer survivor, so I'm kind of concerned about things like that. And so when
Mhm.
I see people that they say, well, it doesn't matter. It's about how much money the corporation can make because that's going to help society. And so what about the cancers it causes? What about those things? And so I tend to say, well, I understand that's their point of view, but I have a point of view where that's very destructive. So I'm going to try to do something about that.
Yeah. Someone's always going to have a point of view. I mean, that's the human race. So, yes, if this is something you believe strongly in, then it's something that you should follow. Absolutely.
So I understand, like in terms of like the theory of empathy, and when you talk to people, where you try to get leadership to even entertain the idea of empathy, is there like resistance, or over time you're seeing less resistance?
It really depends on the person, because I've heard that myth about empathy is soft, or empathy makes it so you're not a strong leader. And my job is to get rid of those myths, because we have this idea that empathy is about feeling, and it's not completely. There's 43 kinds of empathy. Feeling is one of them. So the first thing that I do is I go in and I talk to leadership and I try to help them understand that, this is about understanding and connection. And business is understanding and connecting to people. It doesn't matter what your business is. So we can actually trace it back and say this helps with profit, productivity, and innovation. And the data is there to prove it. Now, if someone is just going to be against it, and some are, usually they tend to be older, um, there's really nothing I can do to force them to believe anything. But usually the people that I talk to already understand that this is important and that a change needs to be made. And it's just a matter of making that change in a way that really does increase profit, productivity, and innovation. And we can do that.
So in terms of like the marketplace, like this is a global economy.
Mhm.
And a lot of companies have global marketplaces, but then when you look in the boardroom, they don't have a global look to the boardroom. Um, so you're wondering, like, are they going to get it based on the makeup of the people making the decisions? Or are you able to make a persuasive argument based on just like it is profitable to have diversity because the marketplace is diverse.
Mhm.
It is profitable to have empathy because you're going to be able to get into new areas where like where you can actually make a mark with your with your company
Yeah,
instead of just being like comfortable with what you've always done, or this is the way we always do it, or this is our codex, this is what we do. Can you grow on that and expand that and become bigger doing what you're saying?
sure. Oh, totally. There's actually 2 parts to that. So the first thing to keep in mind is that not all countries think of empathy the way we do. A lot of countries teach empathy in schools as part of what's called social emotional learning, like the Norse countries, Denmark, Sweden, Finland. Those guys, they start at the age of 6. It ends at the age of 16. So they actually feel it's important enough to make it part of their culture from a very young age.
Mhm.
So, and there's a lot of Asian countries that do it. There's European countries that do it. So if we want to actually be able to fit into a global economy, that means understanding that maybe even though we haven't given empathy the importance that maybe it should have, other countries already do, and we're behind. The other part of this is that there was a study that was done by Ernst and Young in the wake of the pandemic to look at the Great Recession and the Great Resignation. And specifically, they asked questions to employees and employers about empathy in the workplace. And what they found is that leaders that could put this into their workplace effectively raised productivity by 87%, innovation by 86%, and profit by 84%. And this isn't Melissa's opinion. This is Ernst and Young. This is a big four global consultancy. So
Mhm.
there's every reason in the world to bring this in a global market and to even do more than we're doing now. The
Yeah,
data's there.
yeah, 'cause I actually was an expat in Tokyo for 2 years,
Oh,
and I learned, like, what the thing that was interesting, my company came with this kinda top-down thing into when they came into Tokyo, they said they were gonna basically turn a Japanese insurance company into an American insurance company. But being on the ground as an expat, I started to argue with the people in the US is like, we're in Japan, right? The
yeah,
Japanese market is different than the American market. What we're trying to do is not going to work if we don't respect the way they do business,
yes,
right? And so, with the example of the situation was like when the Japanese managers had a mistake in the Japanese insurance company and a communication to the clients, they would actually book like a coliseum and have the customers come in and bow and apologize to the customers for the mistake, right? The
yeah,
Americans looked at that and they said, "No, we're not going to do that. We're going to stop doing that." And we're like, we're as the expats, they were saying, well, "That's a mistake because you don't understand this market.
yeah,
This is what they do. This is the business etiquette of this culture is to have kind of zero defects, and if you have a defect, you have to apologize, right? So it's like if you don't understand that, you're gonna lose the market share.
yeah,
And eventually we lost the market share and pulled out of the market because they didn't listen to what we were telling them. Because they said, "Well,
yeah,
you guys have gone with the Japanese point of view, and we're pulling you out." And I'm like, "Okay, that's what you chose to do."
yeah, yeah. They didn't take the perspective of that other culture. It's totally empathy related. You're right on.
Yeah, so I've seen but it was like a top-down decision being made by a room of people that weren't that diverse. And they would come to Japan for like a day or 2. We were there for like 2 years. And even though we told them we're on the ground, telling them they still had their mindset, and we couldn't convince them, even though we
Yeah,
give them facts and numbers. Is like so it's really like I'm hoping like for what your experience is like maybe you would have had a better way of convincing them.
If they are absolutely set in their ways, they're probably not gonna call me in in the first place, you know? But my hope is for the future. My hope is with the middle managers. They're with the people who are leading both up and down, and therefore the people that have enough foresight to be able to say, "This is the way of the future." Because the more we feed into this and the more we grasp how important it is, those are the leaders that are gonna be supercharged and the
And
other ones are going to be left in the dust. So it'll show itself.
yeah, because I mean, the way things are going with the world, I mean, it's getting globalization is not going the other way.
No.
People might think that we want to retreat back to like a 1950s. Let's just build everything here. But supply chains, the way things work, is everything is based on inputs and outputs from all over the world. Like even in software, we have teams like in Poland, teams in India, teams in Canada. We have teams all over the place. And
Yeah.
even though it's software, it's being built in the same way that a car company has like a facility in Mexico or a facility in Canada across the board. And so every country you go to has different cultures, has different aspects, and then people, if you're not empathetic, if you just say, "I'm going to do my way or the highway," or my interest first, my American interest or my Canadian interest or my anytime you take your own interest without considering like the whole, I think that's when we get into fights now internationally is like, are they going to be nationalism or globalism?
Well, but at the end of the day, it's just like your company when they pulled out. They didn't understand, so they lost that market. And we are in a global market and we do have to be able to have a certain amount of perspective taking and others need to do it for us as well. So you're not going to unring that bell. We're
Yeah.
there now.
Yeah, it's like always sometimes when you go forward, people kinda yearn for the way it was before,
Oh, sure. Yeah.
and people was like, "Well, I used to be able to just" like, back in software back in the '90s, I used to have my programmer right next to me in the aisle and my QA guy, and they were all in the same room.
Yeah.
Now that's all over the world, like, and so and I might have to get up at 7 in the morning or 8 at night to talk to somebody in a different time zone. Where we
Yeah.
used to all be in the same room. And I've
Right.
heard people kind of like, "Oh, I wish I could go back to where we're all in the same room." Well, that's kinda not what it is. Like, what it is like we're dealing with somebody in India and somebody in Poland and somebody in Germany and somebody in the UK, somebody in China, and they have different accents, they have different points of view, they have different mindsets. And so, like,
Yes.
all that we should look at as a positive, not a negative to back where we could have just been all in the same room.
Yes. I agree. But and at the end of the day, there's no going back. I mean, we're just this is where we are. So we have to move forward because we can't move back. I mean, when the car was invented, there was people who wanted to stick with the horse and buggy too,
Yeah,
and that's played out over time.
yeah,
I
it's
don't see many horses and buggies out on the highway.
that's like an AI. I mean, I saw a note where, like, there are gonna be, like, tractor trailers that are be totally autonomous, right? So if your whole life you're a truck driver and you were doing that, well, in the next 10, 15 years, maybe even 5, that might go away. So we're in a like, that's a horse and buggy moment today where there's a lot of their programming jobs are replaced by AI right now.
Yeah.
There are jobs that are gone because low level coding you can replace.
Yes.
Yeah, so and there are engineers that can get knocked out because of low level engineering jobs that can be replaced. So we're in this big kind of modern like revolution with this AI and robotics combined. Suddenly, people are going to have to find new ways of doing things or
Yeah.
even existing and in the workplace. And that's I mean, it's like a horse and buggy moment on steroids.
Yeah. Oh, it absolutely is. And the thing is because we're in the middle of that moment, We don't know. I mean, I can talk about the horse and buggy and the car because we have the luxury of hindsight. We can look back and see how it turned out. Right now, we're in the middle of this, so we don't know how it's going to turn out. But what if that truck driver secretly always wanted to be an artist? And now, because he doesn't have to drive truck, he can figure out a way to actually monetize this and become an artist or do something else that he wants to do. I mean, yeah, these jobs will go away, but what are they going to open the door to? We don't even know yet. It's the future is amazing.
Yeah, a lot of it is like entrepreneurial. I mean, basically, it's like a micro level entrepreneur. Like you can see it like in Africa, you have these micro level like creators. Like they'll create like a product at a real small level,
Yeah.
micro level businesses able
Yeah.
to
Micro grants and
micro grants and stuff. And with the
yeah.
3D printer and with the AI technology, you could have an idea and you could actually produce it at a scale that you could have never done and
Yes.
actually have use the AI automation and all the capabilities to actually have a consistent product that you would have had to have a big facility to do 5-10 years ago, and you don't actually need that. And you could have very customized products for very individual needs. So we can have a big resurgence in kind of individual creators or artisans in this modern world, a modern artisan using this tech to build
Yes.
very individualistic things that could have never been mass produced.
Yeah.
Where
And
I
how
see
cool.
where I see
How
things going, that's the glass half full looking at it.
yeah. Well, and how cool is that? Because these are people that maybe in the past would have had to be in menial jobs and minimum wage jobs and maybe even no jobs at all. And now this has opened up. And it's opened up beyond that because like I mean, like you were talking about, we're in contact with the Philippines, we're in contact with South Africa, we're in contact with, you know, Tokyo and Brazil and everywhere. I mean, it really is the sky's the limit because we can work all over the world. And if people have those amazing ideas and can use AI to bring those to fruition, wow. I mean, how cool is that?
Yeah, it's a lot of cool stuff. Cause I mean, I was talking to one time this engineer, and they came up with this idea. Then they actually took a trip to China and then found a way to take that idea and actually create a small company building that themselves. They had been in a bigger company and they decided, I'm gonna take the risk and I'm gonna take this idea and I'm gonna find like the ability to turn it into a supply chain and find the people who could actually build my idea
Yeah.
and do it. And it is that initiative can be done today. Like you can go and do it. And it's
Yes.
just a matter of you kind of having the fortitude to do it, the stomach to do it, because it's hard. I mean, not every idea you do is going to win the first time. Like a
Yes.
lot of times you have to do things and you fail upwards. It's kind of a IT thing. You're
Yeah.
going upwards.
Totally. Yeah. Fail fast, fail forward. Yeah.
But that's like, it's nothing wrong with making mistakes. I've always been a big proponent of happy accidents.
Yeah.
Like when I in the creative process in the design process, like you like going and having this kind of mad inventor, mindset. It's like let's try it. Let's see
Yeah.
what happens. And you want to be safe, but I mean you try to do like out of the box thinking,
Yeah.
rather than being constrained to the box. Is like why not? you know.
Yeah. That's where some of the coolest inventions and coolest ideas have come from. I mean, like, you think about the guy that invented the microwave, right? I mean, we all use it like every day. But they were working on something, this would have been like the 50s, and it had to do with the space program. And he walked in and he had a chocolate bar in his pocket and he realized that whatever it was, it melted that. It's not like he was around it enough to like cook him or anything like
Yeah,
that.
yeah, he
But
figured
he
out
figured,
the accident.
yeah,
Yeah,
he
these
figured out
happy
that,
accidents. Like
yeah,
aspartame was an accident, it was sweet. And it's like, "Oh, we can use that." It was supposed to be something else. I forgot what it was, but I know it was an accident. It wasn't something they
yeah,
were planning on making that sweet. It just happened to be sweet. So,
right,
that happens all the time. Like in
yeah,
design, we come up with a design that was supposed to be for X, but it's actually better for this, and it's actually better than the project, and we actually move everybody to the new thing. Just because
Yeah.
we found something out of the blue, it's like, "Oh, this is actually better." And the thing is, like, if you have if you're kinda scared and you like, "I gotta stick to the plan because that's the plan." And like, if that new idea comes, like the muse, like an artist is like, "We are
Yeah.
willing to take the download,"
Yes.
right? And then we go with the download. But if you don't have that fortitude that you don't go with the download, you say, "Well, I don't know. I don't know." So then you hide from it, you get scared of it, and it's like because you care about too much about what everybody outside thinks. You got to not care about as much about that as the is it something that's actually going to satisfy your soul?
Yes.
Is it going to satisfy going forward? And then not be scared of the impact because somebody's going to say they hated it, but you don't have to not do it because they said they hated it.
Oh, someone will say they hated it. I mean, you're always gonna you're it's just anytime you take human nature and behavior is always on a spectrum. So you're always gonna have both sides of it. But so what? I mean, there will always be the haters and there will always be the lovers, and most people will fall somewhere in between.
Well, it's a
You're
spectrum. Everything's on
Yeah.
the spectrum. Like
Yep.
because I always deal with a lot of neurodivergent artists where people are starting to realize that in the arts, a lot of times the neurodivergence is part of being the artist, right?
Always has been. Yeah.
It always has been. Like a lot of the
Yeah.
famous artists were neurodivergent when you go look it up. And so
Yeah.
this idea that you can't do it if you're not like of a certain type, and there's no
Yeah.
type. Like
Yeah.
it's like you just do it, whoever you are, whatever you are. Don't feel like you can't do it because of some in the box constraint. Because I think society tells you to be in the box, and then they tell you to be out of the box, but they don't really support you being out of the box.
Yeah. No, that you're not going to get support if you're out of the box, but you will have your freedom. And you are authentically getting to be who you are and do what you do, and that has a lot of satisfaction. That's one other thing with social media is we do tend to care a lot. I mean, we've always cared a lot about what other people think. That's part of that tribal aspect. And, if you go against the tribe, you're going to get thrown out in the wilderness alone. So I mean, it goes back to caveman days, but with the internet, you have the opportunity to feel you look stupid in front of more people.
Yeah,
But the
yeah,
people that can just take the chance and go for it, and why not? Everything blips on the internet so fast anyway. Who's going to remember tomorrow?
yeah. Because I mean, it's a very it's kind of throw it at the wall. Like
Yeah.
there's an aspect of like recording, like if there are people that will hold their recording, and like they'll just never show it to anybody. They'll have
Yeah.
like tons of demos and never show anybody anything. And then with the net now, you can just throw it onto SoundCloud. You just throw it out there. You just put it out onto Mixcloud or throw it into some area of the net. And like what you thought wasn't going to work, somebody in Norway's digging it. Somebody in Australia's digging it. Somebody in Singapore is digging it. You're like, well, maybe they don't dig it here, but they like it there.
Yeah.
so,
Yeah.
so you just so you don't know what you should put out. So why don't you just throw it at the wall and see what happens?
Well, you never know which people that's gonna collect to you. We're back again to collecting your people, collecting your tribe, because you just never know where that tribe's gonna be, where they're all gonna come from. So why not take a chance? Because there's probably all sorts of people out there that are gonna understand where you're coming from. It's just a matter of finding them. And the internet lets us do that. It isn't like you're in the 50s and you're stuck in a small town and you don't even have a telephone and you're not
Yeah,
getting out. You
that's the
know,
great thing.
you can hop on the internet and find your tribe anywhere in the world.
It's like the law of attraction. If you throw it out there, like just because Springfield, Mass doesn't like it, doesn't mean that somebody in Tokyo is not gonna like it. It's
Yeah,
like your hometown isn't the best example of like if you're gonna kick it, right? Like and maybe it used to be. Like you had to
yeah,
start there. But now you don't have to start there. And I
right.
think that's really freeing to a lot of people because a lot of times in the place where you grew up, people might not really know. They know you from what they knew about you in that relationship. But outside of that zone, people don't know you.
Yeah.
So that overhead, that stuff that's kind of anchoring you down because of high school or junior high or what you knew doesn't have to continue to hold you back outside of that zone. So you should kind of be free to push it out, be kind of flower and
Yeah.
not care about what your immediate, people around you think.
Right. And really, at the end of the day, what have you got to lose? Even if, let's take worst case scenario and someone gets crummy with you, because it'll happen, even if that one person gives you the opportunity to collect 10 of your tribe around you, and in the process, you actually get to flower and learn more about yourself and who you are and what you're putting together and how you fit into this world, then it was worth it. You know, worst case scenario, best case scenario, you find your tribe right away and you're actually with people who get you and you get them. And it doesn't matter where they're
Well, sometimes like when you evolve, it's like, like where you were when you're 17 is not where you are when you're 25, when you're 35, 45.
at.
And
That's
sometimes
the
the
truth.
people that were around you when you're 17, they're not meant to be around you when you're 25 or 35 or 45.
Yes.
If you're trying to still stay there, you you're not really growing because like
Right.
if you're pushing back to be, then some people want to go back to high school because maybe that's the best time they ever had. Because some people
Well,
that's where their high point was, and that's kind of where it is. But like you don't have to be there. Like you going that direction is not really gonna get you where you need to be.
no. But I mean, it does take all kinds. And if that's where somebody wants to be, then that's where they're at. But you shouldn't let that hold you back if you've got a growth mindset and a passion for learning and there's other things you want to do, because there will be people that are perfectly happy. I mean, I know there's still people in my hometown in Keokuk, Iowa, that are still there, and that's fine because that's what they want. It's just not what I wanted.
Yeah. Well, I mean, some people just that's their path. Like
Yes.
I'm a Buddhist. Like that's your path to be on that in that zone. That's your path.
Yeah.
You just kind of have to know your path. That don't get influenced by that comparison trap.
Yes.
Like if you're like, I got to keep up with the Joneses. Well, the Joneses are here, but
Yeah.
where are you? Like you're really over way out in space. You're thinking about Mars and Jupiter, and they're thinking about like over here. And so it's like, well, that's where I'm kind of out there, and I need to be like Jack Kerouac and go on the road.
Yeah.
I got to get out there. Then it's not for my friends. Maybe it's not for my family, but like that's where I got to go.
Yeah.
And when you think about like shifts in the way people like live today, because like in a pandemic, it was like everybody was remote, and people, had the Great Resignation, and then there are some people that probably they like being in the office,
Yeah.
right? And then there's some people that there was a lot of freedom in not being in the office or not being a road warrior.
Yeah.
So it's like, where do you think that things are going in the next 5 to 10 years with all the tech and everything going on? Which direction do you think people are going back to the workplace, or people going remote, or people going like I'm going to have my own job and my own thing?
Yeah. I think it really depends on, by and large, who your leadership is. Because if it's a leader that really wants what's best for the employees, right? We're back to perspective taking again. And what's best for the employees and best for the company, because I mean, it's a business. You have to make money. Without money, you're not going to have a business. You have to be able to pay your employees with something. And what's best for the business and going to create the best profit is to be able to let people work from home, which there's studies that show people are by and large more productive when they're at home. I think that those are the kind of people that are going to be forward thinking, that are going to use their empathy to say, yeah, this is what's best for all involved, including the organization. And they're going to find a way to work with the technology instead of against it. I think the people that are being heavy handed and insist on having people coming into the office when people have already relocated their lives, they've already gone on promises they weren't going to come back in, they've already made plans, are going to find people leaving these jobs. Right now, because of the environment and the job market, people are doing what's called job hugging. They don't want to give this up. But the thing is if we think backwards to like the 70s when there was runaway inflation and these same kind of problems, we were doing that then. It's kind of the same thing over again. So, it will work its way out, and eventually we'll come out of the fiscal period that we're in, and people will find jobs that suit themselves better. Or we have people that are being entrepreneurial about it and saying, I'm not going to live in that life. I'm going to figure out how to do this better with me and do the things that I've always wanted to do.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting when you get people, like companies that say they got to be brick and mortar. Like I understand the restaurant's brick and mortar.
Yeah.
That's kind of service companies sometimes have to be kind of brick and mortar. But when
Yeah.
you're dealing with like IT, like I'm an IT guy and I've been remote for 5 years. Even before the pandemic, I decided to stop being a road warrior. And I
Yeah.
just found it fit my life. Like, because my wife has cancer, my daughter is disabled. I needed to be home and I needed to be able to support my family and still be able to do the job. And being a road warrior wasn't doing it. And I found that I could actually still do it, that type of work, without being on the plane from Sunday to Thursday.
Yeah.
What so what I found is some guys actually just used it as an excuse because they didn't want to be home. Yeah, right. So
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
decided was like I like being home.
Yeah.
So it's like
Well,
you can make a choice.
yes. Well, but that's to your point. I mean, to each their own, right? I mean, some people, like my husband's in healthcare, and healthcare is on site.
Yeah,
There's
yeah, it's like you
you
gotta be there.
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, it just depends, but if this is what's working better for you and you're finding yourself at your most productive and you can have the work-life balance that you want, then having a leader that's going to see that and understand that, that's smart because it's better for the organization.
Yeah, I mean, I live in New Hampshire, and there's a whole group of us that were actually taking a bus to South Station, Boston, every day and
Wow.
working downtown, so we could live in New Hampshire and then work in Boston and take care of the differential because you get paid more in Boston than you do in New Hampshire. So we
Uh-huh.
go through having to do that 3-4 hour commute to make the money. But after the pandemic, people said, "Well, I can just do that from home. I don't have to do the 4 hours of like wasted time
Yeah.
in that commute." And there are some companies that they say, "Oh no, you have to be here." And the people that said, "Forget it,"
Yeah.
because and then they said, "Well, we can't find people." It's like, well, why are you being so dictatorial about them having to be in the cube when you know they don't have to be in the cube? And I just couldn't get like you guys are going to hurt yourself because you want to micromanage or you want to know they're in the cube.
Yep.
Like what's the point? Like what is the problem? Like you think they're the way you can monitor me from home. You
Yes.
know when I'm doing keystrokes, you can see if I'm there. So it's
Yeah.
not like I'm not doing the work. I actually find out that people do like 4 hours more when they're working from home, 2 to 4 hours more work than when they're at home because they're
Yeah.
not doing a 4 hour commute.
Yeah. But it's exactly where we started, right? I mean, the people that understand the other people and how to bring the best out of other people, they're gonna be the ones to thrive. The ones that are gonna micromanage and be difficult, they're hurting themselves and they don't even know it.
Yeah, somehow they think because they've been told
Yeah.
that whether you're at home, like where you're playing video games or you're in the garden or you're like on the beach, you're not doing the work, you're not taking it serious. So there's this thing about like you're not serious. You're
Yeah.
not really caring about your professional career. You don't care about like there's all these things they throw on it, and it's all just a lot of like gobbledygook. It's like, okay, fine, you wanted to say this. And you can believe it, but if you when you see that the high performers are actually they're working at the startup
Yeah.
and they're doing it remote and they're
And
working with some
performing
guys,
better.
yeah, and they're working with Hong Kong and they're working with people in like Dubai and they're doing all this stuff and they're doing really well. They're making 6 figures, 7 figures. Like they're pretty serious to me.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's where your quality of leadership is gonna come in because there are leaders who do see that and understand that. I mean, there are ones that are going to be the supercharged leaders of the future, and the empathy and the ability to understand their people is going to be their superpower. And there are those who are going to be stuck in the old ways, and they're going to wish for their horse and buggy, and that's just, they're going to wonder why these other people are running circles around them, and either they will wake up and they'll learn, or they won't. But that's human nature.
Yeah, and the way things are in the marketplace today, if you don't stay in the rat race, like you get kind of pushed to the corner.
Yep. Evolve or go extinct.
You get lots of companies that didn't understand, and the model's gone. It's like that business doesn't work anymore.
Yeah.
So it's like if you don't change where the marketplace is going, like if you don't adapt to the buying habits of your consumer or what's going on globally, like what the trends are, and you buck the trend because like I'm a traditionalist, so I'm going to buck the trend. I'm going to stay where I've always been. Well, you have a right to do that. We'll see if you're still here 5 years from now.
Yeah. Well, that's just it. They will self-select out or be selected out by the market. And what happens is going to happen.
Yeah. Well, wish everybody well on what they want to do. Everybody has the right to do what they want, but we're just pointing out that like if the softer skills, being empathetic about what your workers' needs are, and not micromanaging, kind of what we kind of talked about is like having, understanding. Like, what if you have somebody they got kids, or they got a disabled child, or if they're watching their grandma, they're watching their grandpa. They've got to be there. And then if you don't have empathy for that, okay, you can have that. But I think the bosses that understand that are going to get really good workers.
Yeah.
Right. That those workers who have that grandmother or the grandma, they're not bad workers.
Yeah.
And I think that's maybe the mindset we've got to get people to understand is like, just because you're taking care of somebody doesn't mean that you're not taking care of business.
Yeah. And there are people who understand it. We just need more. We need to just keep getting the word out there. So I appreciate you having me on to talk about it, because the only way to get the word out there is to talk about it.
Well, I want to thank you for being here. We do have your Amazon link, and that's for your book, right? And what's the name of your book again?
The Empathic Leader: How EQ via Empathy Transforms Leadership for Better Profit, Productivity, and Innovation.
And we've got your Instagram, empathyqueen.eq.
Yep.
And so both of those links are fully clickable, and we've been live on LinkedIn, YouTube, and Kick. We will be on channels like Spotify Video Podcast, iHeartRadio, Apple Podcast, and Amazon Podcast. By tomorrow, we'll create a landing page so everybody can just pick whatever plan, whatever service they like on the replay. And I want to thank you again for being on the show today.
My pleasure. Thank you so much for having me. And thanks to your audience for having me too.
Thank you.